Hi everyone, Cassandra here. Today I'm sharing something that happened to me 6 months ago that completely changed my perspective on workplace loyalty and knowing your worth. I'm a 40-year-old married mother of two, and after 15 years of managing payroll for a construction company, I was fired because a 26-year-old MBA convinced my boss that his Excel spreadsheet could do my job better. Spoiler alert, it couldn't. But what happened next? Well, that's where this story gets interesting. Let me paint you a picture of who I am. I started at Martinez Construction when I was 25, right after my oldest was born. I needed stable work with good benefits, and they needed someone detail-oriented who could handle their increasingly complex payroll needs. I'm not someone who went to a fancy college. I got my associate's degree in accounting from our local community college while working nights at a grocery store. But what I lacked in prestigious credentials, I made up for in dedication and real-world experience. Over 15 years, I built their payroll system from the ground up. When I started, they had 30 employees. By the time this story takes place, we had 150 workers across 6 active job sites. My husband, Mike, works as an electrician, actually for one of our subcontractors, so I understood construction work from both sides. I knew these guys weren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. They were people with mortgages, child support payments, and families depending on accurate, timely paychecks. People think payroll is just multiplying hours by hourly rate. In construction, not even close. Let me break down what I actually handled every single week. First, there's prevailing wage. Any government project requires paying workers a specific wage that varies by trade and location. A carpenter in the north part of the county might have a different prevailing wage than one working 10 miles south. These rates change quarterly, and if you mess them up, the Department of Labor comes knocking with massive fines. Then there's certified payroll, detailed reports required for all government projects showing exact wages paid to each worker, their classifications and benefits. These aren't just spreadsheets, they're legal documents. Falsifying them, even accidentally, is a federal offense. We had union workers with one set of rules and non-union workers with another. Some guys were apprentices with graduated pay scales based on hours worked. Others were journey-level workers who got different rates for different tasks.
An operator might run an excavator in the morning at one rate, then work as a general laborer in the afternoon at another rate. And if overtime kicks in, that's calculated based on a weighted average of both rates. Don't even get me started on multi-state taxation. We had jobs in 3 states, each with different tax laws, unemployment insurance rates, and workers' comp requirements. Over 15 years, I'd built relationships with auditors, union reps, and government officials. When issues arose, and they always do in construction, a phone call from me could smooth things over. My reputation was gold in those circles. 0 major violations in 15 years. That's practically unheard of in construction. Enter Bradley Coleman. Brad. 26 years old, fresh MBA from a respected state university, hired as our new operations efficiency manager at probably twice what I was making. The owner, Mr. Martinez, was getting older, and his son, who was supposed to take over, had 0 interest in the family business. So Mr. Martinez was trying to modernize operations, hoping to make the company attractive for eventual sale. Brad showed up on a Monday in July, wearing a suit that probably cost more than I made in a week. The construction guys immediately nicknamed him Clean Shoes because his loafers stayed spotless despite touring job sites. His first week was all about stakeholder meetings and process mapping. When he got to my office, a converted supply closet that I'd made cozy with plants and pictures of my kids, he looked around like he'd discovered a time capsule. "Still using filing cabinets?" he asked, not even trying to hide his smirk. "And are those actual paper timesheets?" I explained our system, how foremen collected timesheets each day, how I verified them against job logs, how I personally called to clarify any discrepancies, how my paper backup had saved us during the ransomware attack 3 years ago when other companies lost everything. Brad took notes on his iPad, nodding and making sounds like "interesting" and "I see." but his eyes had that look, you know the one, that I'm gonna fix this dinosaur system look.
3 weeks later, we all got called into the conference room. Brad had prepared what he called a digital transformation initiative. He had a whole PowerPoint with animations and everything. The centerpiece was his automated payroll system built in Excel with what he called advanced macros and VBA scripts. He showed flowcharts, efficiency graphs, and most importantly, cost savings projections. The big number on the screen? $73,000 annual savings. That was my salary, benefits, and the small budget I had for supplies. Mr. Martinez was eating it up. This is exactly the kind of forward thinking we need, he said, while I sat there feeling my chest tighten. Mr. Martinez, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, construction payroll has unique complexities. What about prevailing wage calculations? Brad jumped in. The spreadsheet has separate columns for different wage types. It's actually simpler than the current system. And certified payroll reports? Excel exports to any format needed. Union agreements, multi-state taxation, weighted overtime calculations, all programmable. That's the beauty of automation, Cassandra. Once it's set up, it runs itself. I looked around the room. The other department heads were avoiding eye contact. They knew this was wrong, but nobody wanted to be seen as opposing progress. The next morning, I was called into Mr. Martinez's office. HR was there. My stomach dropped. Cassandra, we appreciate your 15 years of service, but we're eliminating your position as part of our modernization efforts. Brad will absorb payroll duties into his role. 2 weeks' notice. 15 years, and I got 2 weeks? I didn't cry. I'm proud of that. I sat there, stone-faced, while they explained my severance package, 2 months' pay and COBRA benefits. They'd be happy to provide references. I need to train Brad on the system, I said. Of course, we're counting on your professionalism during the transition. Professionalism, right. I went home that night and told Mike. He was furious, wanted me to quit immediately. But we had bills, college savings to think about. I needed that severance. So I showed up every day for 2 weeks, training someone who clearly thought I was a relic. Brad would sit there, checking his phone while I explained critical processes. Brad, you need to understand when Jose works on the highway project, his apprentice rate changes to, Cassandra, I've got it. Different rates, different columns. The formulas handle everything. I documented everything. Every email summarizing our training, every warning about specific issues, all copied to my personal email. I created detailed instruction manuals he'd never read. I even made a contact list of all the government officials and union reps he'd need to work with. On my last day, a Friday, a few of the construction guys stopped by. Big, tough men, uncomfortable in my tiny office, mumbling thanks and saying it wouldn't be the same. Jose, who'd been with the company almost as long as me, actually teared up. You always made sure we got paid right, Miss Cassandra. Even when the office messed up our hours, you fixed it. We won't forget. The following Thursday was payday. My phone started ringing at 6:47 a.m. It was Maria, one of our project coordinators. Cassandra, I'm so sorry to call, but nobody's getting paid right, and Brad is having a meltdown. Apparently, Brad had spent the weekend optimizing the timesheet system, creating a digital form that workers were supposed to fill out on their phones. Except most of our guys barely used email, let alone online forms. The foreman had submitted paper timesheets as usual, which Brad rejected, demanding they use his system. By Wednesday, he'd managed to input about half the payroll data, but only at base rates. He hadn't accounted for different rates for different jobs, prevailing wages, union versus non-union scales, shift differentials, overtime calculations for workers with multiple rates, or out-of-state work requiring different tax withholding. Thursday morning was chaos. Direct deposits hit accounts, and they were catastrophically wrong. Some workers got 40% of their normal pay. Others got nothing because Brad's system crashed when trying to calculate multi-state taxes. One apprentice somehow got paid $15,000 for a week's work, while his journeyman got $450. By noon Thursday, all 6 job sites were shut down. Workers were walking off, and who could blame them? These guys live paycheck to paycheck. Missed mortgage payments mean late fees they can't afford. The union rep, Tommy Castellone, a guy I'd worked with for a decade, called the Department of Labor. 3 government projects immediately got red flagged for prevailing wage violations. OSHA showed up at one site for a random inspection that everyone knew wasn't random. Mr. Martinez's son called from California, where he was in law school. "Dad, what the hell is happening? I've got reporters calling me about labor violations." Reporters. Yeah. Turns out when 150 construction workers stage an impromptu protest, local news pays attention. The headline: Local construction workers protest payroll mishaps, allege wage theft. Brad, in full panic mode, tried to blame everyone but himself. He sent a company-wide email saying workers had failed to adapt to the new system and submitted incomplete data. That email got leaked to the union. Things got worse. Friday morning, 7:23 a.m., my phone rang. Mr. Martinez himself. "Cassandra, we need you." "I don't work for you anymore, remember? Please, we're going to lose everything. The contracts, the company, everything my father built." I let him sweat for a moment. Mike was gesturing at me to hang up, but I needed to hear this. "What exactly do you want, Mr. Martinez?" "Fix this, please, whatever it takes. I'm expensive now." "How expensive?"
Independent consultant rates, $150 an hour, 30-hour minimum per week, 6-month contract paid monthly in advance. I report only to you, not Brad, and I want it in writing that Brad has 0 authority over payroll operations. Silence. Then, "Deal. And Mr. Martinez, I want you to personally apologize to every single worker for this mess, in person, on the job sites. Cassandra, that's non-negotiable." Okay. I worked around the clock that weekend, not because I cared about saving the company. I did this for the workers. These were good people who deserved to be paid correctly. First, I had to reconstruct the actual hours worked. Brad's system had corrupted some of the original data, so I had to call foremen, check job logs, and even review security camera footage from job sites to verify when workers arrived and left. Then came recalculating everything correctly, prevailing wages retroactively applied, union benefits properly allocated, weighted overtime for multiple rate workers, corrected tax withholding for multi-state work, hazard pay that Brad didn't even know existed. I cut emergency checks for everyone, hand-delivering some to workers I knew were in tight spots. By Sunday night, everyone had their correct pay, plus a small inconvenience bonus Mr. Martinez authorized. Monday morning, I filed 7 amended certified payroll reports, personally called the Department of Labor to explain the situation, and managed to get the red flags removed from the government projects. My reputation and relationships saved them hundreds of thousands in potential fines. Brad tried to salvage his position. He created a presentation about lessons learned and system improvements, but the damage was done. The construction crews openly mocked him. Nobody would work with him.
6 weeks later, he was gone. Official story: pursuing opportunities better aligned with his skill set. Real story: Mr. Martinez gave him the option to resign or be fired for gross incompetence. I heard through the grapevine that he got a job at a tech startup doing strategic planning. Good for him. Maybe he'll excel at theoretical work where real people's livelihoods aren't on the line. It's been 6 months. I'm still consulting for Martinez Construction, making more than double my old salary for fewer hours. I work from home 3 days a week, only coming in for critical tasks. The flexibility lets me attend my daughter's soccer games and help my son with his college applications.
Mr. Martinez treats me with a respect he never showed before. He consults me on major decisions, includes me in strategy meetings, and even asked my opinion on his succession planning. The best part? 3 other construction companies have approached me for consulting work. Turns out, word spreads fast in this industry. The woman who saved Martinez Construction from disaster is suddenly in high demand. Here's what I learned from this experience. First, know your worth. I spent 15 years being underpaid and underappreciated because I didn't realize how valuable my specialized knowledge was. It shouldn't have taken a disaster for everyone to recognize that. Second, always document everything. Those emails and training documents I saved, they protected me from any potential blame and proved I'd done everything possible to prevent the disaster. Third, sometimes getting fired is the best thing that can happen. I never would have had the courage to demand what I was worth if they hadn't pushed me out. That forced exit opened doors I didn't even know existed.
Fourth, there's no substitute for experience and relationships. Brad had the degree, the technology skills, and the fancy presentations, but he didn't have 15 years of relationships with union reps, government officials, and workers. In business, especially in industries like construction, those relationships are everything. To anyone out there who feels undervalued, who watches younger employees with fancy degrees get promoted over you, who's told your skills are outdated, don't believe it. Your experience, your relationships, your deep understanding of how things actually work, that's irreplaceable. And to the MBAs and consultants who think everything can be optimized and automated, maybe spend some time understanding what you're trying to replace before you declare it obsolete. Because sometimes that inefficient old system is the only thing standing between smooth operations and complete chaos. As for me, I'm doing better than ever. My kids are proud of their mom for standing up for herself. My husband says I walk taller now. And those construction workers, they still wave and honk when they see me around town. And a few have named their fantasy football teams Cassandra's Revenge in my honor. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's success. And knowing that Martinez Construction will never again underestimate the value of someone who actually knows how to do the job, that's priceless. Thanks for reading my story. Remember, you're worth more than you think. And sometimes it takes a disaster for everyone else to realize it too.